Namaste everyone, I am your co-host Shawnee ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is beekeeping part 2. So this video is in continuation with our previous video where we had already covered several parts of beekeeping. That is, we had studied about the overview of beekeeping. We also discussed about the types of honeybees, then the products obtained from apiculture and how to manage high yields of honey were already covered. So today, in continuation with that previous video, we will be covering other aspects of beekeeping like the castes and colonies of honeybees and the diseases and enemies of honeybees. Okay, so we'll start with the colony and castes of what? Of honeybees. Okay, so this will be today's first topic of discussion under beekeeping. So these honeybees, we already know that honeybee is what? It is a social insect. This we had already studied in our previous video. And the nest of the honeybee is known as, do you know what it is called? Nest of honeybee. It is known as beehive. Okay, so in summer the hive consists of 32 to 50,000 individuals depending on the locality. Okay, and the different castes. Now the members or castes of honeybees. So the castes of honeybees are, what are they? One is the queen bee, second is the worker bee, and third is the drone bee. Okay, so all these three types of castes depend on each other for their existence. Okay, so let's now begin with the first one, that is the queen bee. Okay, so there is always only one queen in a honeybee colony. There is only one queen present, where only one queen is present, where it is present in the honeybee colony, right? So these queens are fertile females. So these queens, they are fertile and they are females. Okay, so queen bee is a fertile female bee. Okay, and they are formed from a fertilized egg, and they are formed from what? They are formed from fertilized egg. Okay, so it is slightly larger than a worker bee. So these queen bees are slightly larger than a worker bee with a longer abdomen. So it does not have pollen baskets on her legs, and eggs that are destined to become queens. So eggs destined to become queen. Okay, those eggs which are destined to become queens, they are laid in a larger cell. They are laid in a larger cell, and the larva that is present or that develops They are fed with what? They are fed with the royal jelly. The royal jelly only. Okay, so they are only fed with the royal jelly. The larva is only fed with the royal jelly. So the royal jelly, what is it? We had already discussed this in our previous video, that royal jelly is also known as bee milk. It is a salivary secretion of the worker bees. So the adult queen's sole duty, what is the sole duty? So the sole duty of an adult queen bee or an adult queen, here we are referring to bee. Okay, so what is the sole duty? It is to lay eggs. Okay, it only lays eggs, and up to, it can lay egg up to 2000 a day. Okay, so it is fed by the workers and never leaves the hive except to mate. So what happens? The queen is always fed by the workers, and it never leaves. And never leaves what? It never leaves the hive. That is, it never leaves the beehive except for mating. So only during mating it leaves the beehive, otherwise it always stays within the beehive. So queen bees also have stings and use them in battles with each other for dominance of the colony. Okay, so the lifespan of queen bee is, what is the lifespan? They have a lifespan of 3 to 4 years. Okay, so when the colony is crowded with adult bees, the queen leaves with a set of workers to establish new colonies and to promote propagation. This natural phenomenon is called swarming. Okay, so this is a natural phenomenon. What happens is, when the colony is crowded, so when the colony, what happens to the colony? When this colony is crowded with adult bees, what happens? The queen leaves the colony. The queen leaves the colony and it leaves with a set of workers. Okay, it leaves with a set of workers, that is a set of worker bees, to establish what? In order to establish new colonies. In doing so, it helps in establishing new colonies, and it also promotes what? This also promotes propagation. Okay, so this promotes propagation, and this natural phenomenon. Now this natural, it is a natural phenomenon. It is known as what? This is known as swarming. Okay, so this is about the queen bee. Okay, now let's talk about the worker bee. Okay, we will be talking about worker bee now. So what happens? The vast majority of adult honeybees in any colony are female worker bees. So they are the vast majority of adult honeybees. in any colony, and they are what? They are female worker bees. Okay, and they are known as, so these female worker bees are the vast majority of adult honeybees in any colony. Okay, so the worker bees they are what? They are sterile. They are sterile, and we already know they are females, so they are sterile females. So they have no individual existence throughout their life. They are the laborers. They are laborers, and hence they work for the betterment. Work for what? For the betterment. They work for the betterment of the colony. Okay, and they have no individual existence. So the functions of worker bees are, what are their functions? Let's see. So what functions do these worker bees perform? So their functions are tending and feeding the young bees. Okay, that is, these young bees can also be called the larvae. Then the function is to make honey. Then they make honey, they make royal jelly and bee bread, to feed what? In order to feed the larvae. Okay, then they also produce, they help in producing wax. They also help in cooling the hive. So they help in cooling hive by, how do they do that? By fanning. By fanning their wings, they help in cooling of the colony. Then they also help in gathering and storing pollen. Then they also gather and store pollen, then nectar and water. Okay, then they also help in guarding. They guard what? They guard hives. Guarding hive. They help in building, cleaning and repairing, and also repairing the comb, that is the honeycomb. They also help in feeding and taking care of. They help in feeding and taking care. Taking care of what? Taking care of the queen and the drones. So these are the different functions performed by the worker bees. Okay. Now let's move on and talk about the drone bee. Drone bee. So drones are what? They are haploid. Okay, so there is only single set of chromosomes. They are haploid. So they are haploid and fertile, and they are males because they develop Because how do they develop? They develop parthenogenetically. Parthenogenetically. Okay, from unfertilized. From the unfertilized eggs. Okay, so the eggs that are not fertilized, they develop from such eggs. They are larger than worker bees and smaller than queen. They are larger than the worker bees and are smaller than the queen. Okay, and they are quite noisy and unable to gather food. So they are stingless and their sole biological function, what is their sole biological function? So their sole biological function is to mate. It is to mate with the queen. This is the sole biological function of the drone bees. Okay. So the number of drones in a colony varies from 200 to 300, but during unfavorable season, they are driven out. Okay. So this is about the colony and different castes of honeybees. Now let's move on and discuss about the diseases. So the diseases and enemies of honeybees. Let's see what are the diseases and enemies of the honeybees. Okay, so there are various diseases. First, let's talk about the viral diseases. The viral diseases in bees. Okay, so talking about viral diseases, the first disease would be sac brood. Sac brood is a viral disease. It is caused by a virus because it is a viral disease, and it is found in 30% of the colony. It is found in 30% of the colony. Okay, and what happens here in this disease? This disease actually prevents larvae. It prevents the larvae from pupating. Okay, so the larva cannot develop into a pupa. So this pupating process is prevented when this disease occurs. Okay, then the next disease would be the Kashmir bee viruses. Okay, so what is Kashmir bee viruses? Let's see. Okay, so here Kashmir bee viruses. So what happens here? So this disease will affect in all stages of development. It affects in all stages of development, okay, of a honeybee. So infected bees, what happen? Infected bees, they actually die in the affected colony. in the affected colony. Okay, so this was about the viral diseases taking place in or occurring in honeybees. Next, let's see and talk about the fungal diseases. Fungal diseases. Okay, so fungal diseases, the disease that I will talk here is chalk brood. Okay, so this disease is caused by, it is a fungal disease, hence it is caused by a fungus. Okay, so strands of fungus invade the larvae tissue. What happens? The fungal strands, they invade what? They invade larvae tissue, and because of it, what happens? This leads to the dying of larva. So the larva dies. So the dead larvae become chalky white in color. This dead larvae becomes chalky white in color. Okay, so this is the fungal disease that occurs in honeybee. Then we will talk about bacterial diseases. Bacterial disease. Okay, so this bacterial diseases, American foul brood. American foul brood, that is AFB. So this disease is caused by, a spore forming bacterium. Okay, so a spore forming bacterium is responsible for causing this disease, and this bacterium penetrates the gut wall. So the bacterium, what it does is it penetrates what? It penetrates the gut wall. It penetrates the gut wall and body tissue of the larvae. Okay, so infected larvae change color. Infected larvae, what happens in infected larvae? It changes color from a healthy pearly white, which color? Pearly white color to dark brown color. So this is the change we can observe, and die after they are capped, and then they die after they are capped. Okay, so this is the bacterial disease taking place or that occurs in honeybees. Next, let's talk about the protozoan diseases. Protozoan diseases. So let's see what are these diseases. So one is nosema. So what happens here? This disease is caused by spore forming protozoa. It is caused by a spore forming protozoa. Okay, so it impairs the digestion. Here what happens? This disease impairs digestion and this leads to dysentery. Okay, this is happening in case of nosema. Then the next protozoan disease would be, it is Apiary disease. Apiary disease, what happens here? So the Isle of Wight, it is an Apiary disease. It is an Apiary disease and this is caused by a small parasitic mite. It is caused by what? It is caused by a small parasitic mite. Okay, due to the blocking of the trachea of bee. Due to what? It happens due to blocking of trachea of bee. Okay, so the infestation of this mite causes chronic bee paralysis. This infestation of this mite leads to what? It causes or it leads to, the infestation of mite leads to chronic bee paralysis. Okay, so next up is enemies. So there are large number of animals who act as enemies to the bees. Some of the enemies are, some of the enemies are what? They are wax moth, wax beetle, then toads, snails, ants, dragonflies, then praying mantis, then termites, etc. They are the enemies of the honeybees. Okay, so now let's quickly revise everything that we have covered today about beekeeping. Okay, so today we have discussed about the colony and caste of honeybees and then have talked about the diseases and the enemies of honeybees. So here we have already discussed that honeybee is a social insect and the nest of honeybee, what is it called? It is called beehive. So here we can see a picture of beehive. Here it is a beehive, so it is a nest of honeybees. Okay, and now the castes of honeybees are, there are three castes. One is queen bee, worker bee and drone bee. So we first discussed about queen bee. So there is only one queen in a honeybee colony. So queens are actually fertile females and they are formed from the fertilized eggs. So the eggs that are destined to become queens, they are laid in a larger cell and larvae are fed with the royal jelly only. Okay, and the sole duty of adult queen is to lay eggs up to 2000 a day. So the queen is fed by the workers, and the queen never leaves the hive except for mating. The lifespan of queen bees is around 3 to 4 years. So when the colony gets crowded with adult bees, what happens is the queen leaves the colony with a set of workers, and she does this for establishing new colonies and helping in promoting propagation, and this natural phenomenon is known as swarming. Okay, then we discussed about worker bee. So vast majority of adult honeybees in a colony are these female worker bees. So these female worker bees are sterile females, and they are laborers and they work for the betterment of the colony. So what is the main function? They help in tending and feeding young bees, that is larvae, making honey, royal jelly and bee bread to feed larvae. Then they also help in producing wax. They also help in cooling the hive by fanning their wings. They help in gathering and storing pollen, nectar and water. They help in guarding the hive, building, cleaning and repairing the comb. They help in feeding and taking care of queen and drone. So these are the functions performed by the worker bee. Then we discussed about the drone bee. So they are haploid fertile males, and they develop parthenogenetically from the unfertilized eggs. So these drone bees are larger than worker bees but are smaller than the queen bee. So their sole biological function is to mate with the queen. Okay, so these are the three different castes of honeybees. Then we discussed about the diseases and enemies of honeybees. So first we discussed about viral diseases. So the first disease is sac brood. It is caused by a virus and it is found in 30% of the colony. Okay, so what happens in this disease? It prevents larvae from pupating. Then there is Kashmir bee viruses. So this disease affects in all the stages of development of a honeybee. So infected bees die in the affected colony. So then let's discuss about fungal disease. So the disease is called chalk brood. It is caused by a fungus. Here what happens? The fungal strands invade the larvae tissue and the larvae dies. So the dead larva then appears like chalky white in color. Okay. Then we also discussed about bacterial disease. So the disease is American foul brood or AFB. So it is caused by a spore forming bacterium. This bacterium penetrates the gut wall and body tissue of larvae. So infected larvae, what happens in them? Infected larvae actually changes their color from a healthy pearly white to a dark brown color, and they die after they are capped. And then there were protozoan diseases. So the first is nosema. So it is caused by a spore forming protozoa. What happens here? In this disease, there is impairment in digestion that leads to dysentery. Then there is another disease which is under protozoan diseases, that is acarine disease. So the Isle of Wight is an acarine disease caused by a small parasitic mite. Due to how it is caused, this disease is caused due to the blocking of the trachea of the honeybee. This leads to the chronic bee paralysis, that is the infestation of this mite can cause chronic bee paralysis. Then we also discussed about the enemies. So there are several enemies of honeybees. Some of them are wax moth, wax beetle, toads, snails, ants, dragonflies, praying mantis, termites, etc. So these are different enemies of honeybees. So I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.